All right, well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do is we'll go ahead and I want to give the preponderance of the time to Brian and his presentation on Salem Field and the Buffalo Blue Jays, 2021 and 2020 for that matter. Brian is a longtime member of SABR and gave this presentation first to the SABR Ballparks Research Committee back in March, which was an excellent presentation and is available on YouTube if you'd like to go look for it. Dixie, of course, as he mentioned, was the one who recommended it, and I'm grateful to Dixie for that because really looking forward to this. Brian is also the editor, should I say editor, webmaster, content master of the Chronicles?
Yeah, I guess webmaster, creator of the Herd Chronicles would be the best way to say it.
Okay, and the Herd Chronicles is the fan website for the Buffalo Bisons and all things Buffalo baseball, Western New York baseball. It's a cool website, lots of good content. Brian is an expert in the field of baseball, and if you have had a chance to see any of the recent publications come across SABR's This Week in SABR newsletter or on sabr.org, including perspectives on 42, the recent publication on Jackie Robinson, his place in baseball, his place in society. Wonderful monograph, wonderful publication with lots of good articles in it, including two of our chapter members, Rick Swain's biography on Jackie Robinson, which has been the go-to biography on SABR's Bio Project webpage for Jackie for years, and also an article by Jeff English on Jackie Robinson's time as a Republican post-playing days and his relationship with, among others, Nelson Rockefeller and so forth. Both excellent articles, highly recommended. Brian also has two excellent articles in that publication. Two different articles, games articles, if I remember, about the 52 and 56 World Series. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Two different games. Yeah. So that is an excellent publication. Lots of good information and lots of new articles too, not just articles that had already been published by SABR and then kind of reorganized into a new publication on Jackie, but also new articles written specifically for that publication. Highly, highly recommended. As I mentioned, Brian is also a longtime SABR member. Baseball historian, and I think a practicing attorney by day, if I'm not mistaken.
I actually am a recovering attorney because I was an attorney and I actually did a career change and I'm teaching now. So.
Okay, cool.
Social studies and English as a new language teacher.
Nice. Cool. Very cool. Well, once again, I want to extend our gratitude and appreciation for Brian for joining us tonight to give his presentation on Salem Field and its use by the Blue Jays in 2020 and in 2021 as their home ballpark due to COVID restrictions and the Canadian government not allowing teams to travel to Toronto to play the Blue Jays, nor, if I'm not mistaken, letting the Blue Jays out if they were to ever be allowed in to play any of their opponents on the road. So with that, Brian, floor is yours, sir.
Okay, and I will try to share my screen here. Hopefully this works.
Let me make you a host.
Okay.
And yes. Okay, Brian, you are now the host.
There, can you see my presentation now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, thank you for that nice introduction, and thank you for the recommendation from the presentation that I did for the Ballparks Committee. I lived my whole life just outside of Buffalo. I grew up in Springville, New York, which is about 30 minutes drive south of Buffalo, and I live in Hamburg, New York now. I went to college in Buffalo, so I've lived here my whole life and was a Blue Jays fan my whole life. Toronto is only maybe about an hour and a half from Buffalo, so it's really not that far away. I was fortunate last season to have media credentials and got to go to, I think there were only 3 games that I missed of all the games in Buffalo last year in order to help document it as a part of Buffalo baseball history, and took lots of photos and wrote up. I got to go to like all the press conferences with the manager before and after the game and the players and stuff. So I wrote up a lot of those stories and plan on putting out a book about it when all this is over. And now they're coming back this year, so it's going to be extended for an even longer time. The focus of my presentation is really the transformation of Salem Field last year and what they're doing this year to get ready for the Blue Jays again. But it is the return of Major League Baseball to Buffalo. And so I just wanted to start off by touching on a few major points in Major League Baseball history in Buffalo. And that all kind of starts with the National League Buffalo Bisons. The Bisons were early members of the National League. They were in the league from 1879 to 1885. And they actually had a pretty good team. The National League was an 8-team league then, and they finished third 4 different times. So they didn't win any pennants or anything, but pretty good team. The thing that stands out to me when I look back at this National League team that really stands out is the number of Hall of Famers that they had. And they weren't just Hall of Famers kind of playing at the beginning of their career, end of their career. Most of them were really in the prime of their career when they were here in Buffalo. And it all kind of starts with their pitcher, James Pud Galvin, who was the first pitcher, Major League pitcher to win 300 games. He ended up winning 363 in his career. 218 of them came with the Buffalo Bisons. He also threw 2 no-hitters while he played for Buffalo. Dan Bruthers, who was one of the best hitters of the 19th century, he ended up winning 4 National League batting titles in his career, and 2 of them were when he played for Buffalo. Deacon White, who's also in the Hall of Fame, and he played 5 seasons with the Bisons, hit .301 in those 5 seasons. So he was an older player, but was still in his prime. Jim O'Rourke was their player manager for 4 seasons. He's also in the Hall of Fame. He won the 1884 batting crown with the Bisons. And finally, a player that it's actually his birthday today, but a lot of people don't realize that he played for the Bisons is Old Hoss Radbourn. The Bisons signed him. I think they were his first professional team. I got to check on that, but they signed him to be a pitcher. And he was injured during spring training and wasn't able to pitch. So he ended up playing 6 games for Buffalo, but they were at second base and right field. And because he couldn't pitch, they ended up releasing him. And he went on to a Hall of Fame career, famously winning 60 games one season with the Providence Grays in 1884. So they kind of missed out on him in his prime, but the other guys were all playing for Buffalo in their prime. Buffalo also had a team in the 1890 Players League, which is considered a major league team. That team wasn't nearly as successful as the National League team. They were horrendous, really. They finished in last place, 36-96 record, 46.5 games out of first place. But they did have a couple guys that are still worth mentioning today. If you recognize the player on the left, that's a very young Connie Mack. He was the Players League Bison's catcher, and he was also a part owner of the team. He was an investor because players own the Players League teams, and he had a good season. He had 266, 53 RBI. The player on the right is William Hoy, who was the first deaf player in Major League history, and he played center field for the Bisons that year and hit 298. And Buffalo also had a team in the Federal League, which existed in 1914 and 1915. And they were known as the Buffalo Buffeds their first season, shortened from Buffalo Federals. And then in the second year, they adopted the name the Buffalo Blues. And they were actually a pretty good team. The first season, 1914, they were 80-71. Second season, 1915, they dropped off a little bit and they were 74-78. The 2 probably more prominent players that deserve mention from that team, on the left is Hal Chase, and he's actually wearing his Buffalo uniform there. He hit 347 in 1914, and then in 1915 he led the league, the Federal League, in home runs with 17. His career was kind of tainted by gambling allegations and game fixing allegations.
Okay. Stop.
Yep.
Friday at what time? 11:15.
For me.
Someone's got to tell Kent he's
Okay.
got to mute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Kent, I think
I'm
you,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm talking in a Zoom.
On the right here, we have Russ Ford, who was an Emory ball pitcher. 1914, he went 21-6 with a 1.82 ERA. These two box scores here, when the Bisons or when the Blue Jays came here last year, these were what were considered the last major league games to be played in Buffalo. September 8th, 1915, the Federal League Blues played a doubleheader against the Baltimore Terrapins. The Blues won both games. And this is what people reference, like if you're watching a game on ESPN or something with the Blue Jays in Buffalo, they'll always say this is was the last major league game in Buffalo. However, as we all know, recently Major League Baseball said that Negro League games from 1920 to 1948 in certain leagues would be considered major league, their statistics and so forth. And Buffalo didn't have a Negro League team during that window, 1920 to 1948. However, the city did play host to lots of Negro League games during that time. Teams would stop here and play a game at Offerman Stadium against another Negro League team that they would count in the standings and so forth. The Cleveland Buckeyes, who are the team that are pictured here, would play in Buffalo quite often. And they actually played the last game that Negro League game in that 1920-1948 window that I could find that I think probably is likely to be considered a major league game now is September 8th, 1948. They played a doubleheader with the Chicago American League or Chicago American Giants. And their Cleveland and Chicago were both in the Negro American League. And as far as I can tell, the game counted in the standings like it was a real game. So I think that these two games now we can probably say are the last major league games we played in Buffalo before the Blue Jays came here. And it's kind of ironic because the games actually took place 33 years to the day after that last Buffalo Blues game. So that was kind of neat when I saw that on the dates for that. But as you all know, for most of the Bison's history, we've been a proud minor league team. For the most part, we've been members of the International League. This year they changed, it's now called the AAA East, but we were in the American Association for a while in the 1980s and 1990s, and we were in the Eastern League for a little bit. But for most of the time, we've been a International League team. This is a banner that when the Bisons are playing at Salem Field, hangs out in left field to honor some of the great teams and championship winning teams.
Brian,
And now to the modern day.
may I interrupt? I apologize. You're a host at the moment. Could you see if someone is in the waiting room, please?
I don't know how do I do it.
If you, let's see, as host, if you take a look at the participants list.
Oh, I see. Yep. I think I let them in here.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I apologize for that. It's making you host then turns all responsibility over to you.
Oh, that's okay. You might want to keep reminding me of that, but I'll try to keep make sure. So what's not today known as Salem Field was originally called Pilot Field when it opened in 1988. This is a picture from back then. This is a picture from 1988. It was originally built to try to attract an expansion team here. And it kind of kicked off the whole retro ballpark movement. A lot of people, think of Camden Yards as kind of kicking off that movement, but Pilot Field was actually opened 4 years before Camden Yards, and it was designed by the same architectural firm that designed Camden Yards and a lot of the retro kind of ballparks that came after. It really, when you look at this picture, you can kind of see it's really right downtown, sits right in the middle of a lot of historical buildings. And when it was built, it held 19,500 people. but it was built so that if we did get a major league team, they could add on an upper deck. And then what you see there, that little upper deck would become the mezzanine. And if we would have got a major league team and they added the upper deck, it would have held 41,000 people. Of course, in 1991, Denver and Miami were awarded the expansion teams, and we've been a minor league team since. It currently holds 16,600, which is a little bit less than when it opened. And there's a variety of reasons for that. The bleachers that you can see there in right field are no longer there. They put like a party deck out there. There's another party area that they added along the first baseline that took out some seating. They've, in the last few years, they've added new seating around behind home plate and up the lines that are wider than the original seats, and that cut down on the attendance. But again, we didn't get the major league team, so until last year. Oh, there we go. Some of the ballpark highlights over the years. I really could have gone on and on. I could have made a whole presentation about this, but some things that kind of stand out. 6 straight years, we went over 1 million fans, which was kind of unheard of at the time. I think Louisville might have done that a couple times before us, but just setting all kinds of minor league attendance records. It was the hot ticket in town. We hosted a couple of AAA All-Star games too, including the first one. Bartolo Colon threw a no-hitter here in 1997. The Bisons won the American Association Championship in 1997, and then won the Governor's Cup, which goes to the International League champions in 1998 and 2004. This picture I took of a billboard that was on the 198 Expressway, which is the, or 190, I'm sorry, Expressway, which is the main highway that brings you into Buffalo. And it went up right after the Blue Jays announced that they were going to be coming here. Last year was really a roller coaster ride for professional baseball in Buffalo. The first thing that happened was the minor league season was postponed. Then on June 30th, the minor league season was canceled. And at that point, there really wasn't believed that the Blue Jays were going to be coming here. We thought that was it for professional baseball at the time. On July 18th, the Canadian government denied the Blue Jays' request to play games at the Rogers Center in Toronto. And that was 6 days before the shortened major league season was supposed to start. So 6 days before the season started, the Blue Jays had to try to find a new home. And if you remember at the time, it was kind of reported in the news that the Blue Jays had come to an agreement with the Pittsburgh Pirates to maybe share PNC Park, and the Pennsylvania Department of Health wouldn't agree to that arrangement. They didn't want so many teams playing at one stadium. Then the Blue Jays kind of turned their attention to try to stay in a major league stadium. They tried to go to Camden Yards in Baltimore, and at least if news reports are to be believed, the Orioles agreed to it, but the Blue Jays didn't want to wait around to see if the state of Maryland would agree to it because their time was growing so short. So they turned their attention to Buffalo. And on July 24th last year, which was the day that the major league season started, the Blue Jays announced that they'd be coming to Buffalo. Luckily, the Blue Jays were on the road at the time. They started the season in Tampa, and they kind of moved some games around and gave themselves a little bit of time, but they only had 18 days to get the field ready. These are some pictures that I've taken over the last couple of years of kind of a lot of the players that are considered the Blue Jays core right now playing for the Buffalo Bisons. The Blue Jays have a really young core right now, led by Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio. And most of them have played in Buffalo just in the last really 2 years. So they were all familiar with the field coming in here. This is a quote from TJ Zoik, who pitched for the Bisons. He actually threw a no-hitter for the Bisons on the road. And he was at the Blue Jays alternate site in Rochester last year for about half the season, or maybe a little bit more than that. And then he got called up to the Blue Jays, so he came back to Salem Field. And he talked about how, and you'll see, I'm going to show some photos here in a second, just the transformation that the field went under, unrecognizable really in a lot of areas to some of the players that had played here with all the changes that they made. So, and the photo on the left here is when the Bisons were playing here a couple years ago, and the photo on the right is the Blue Jays. One of the things that kind of stands out to me as somebody who goes to a lot of games there are even all the advertising on the outfield walls and around the ballpark were changed to Canadian advertising so that they would have that on TV for the games being viewed up in Canada. But the main thing as I go through these photos that kind of show the change in the stadium, the main thing to remember is that what was Pilot Field, now called Salem Field, was a 32-year-old stadium when the Blue Jays came here. So they really had a big job just to bring it up to current major league specifications. But then they also had the added challenge of trying to provide for all the social distancing necessary because their clubhouses were smaller than normal major league clubhouses, and they didn't have the room to really spread out like you would in a normal major league park. So they had to bring it up to current specifications and also provide for social distancing in an 18-day period. So the first thing that kind of became obvious at the stadium was that all the signage, even on the outside of the stadium, was changed to be Toronto Blue Jays. The picture on the right here is the Swan Street Gate, which, let me see if there's anybody in the waiting room. I don't think so. The Swan Street Gate, which would normally be the main entrance for fans, and when the Bisons are playing there, when the Blue Jays were here, it was actually the media entrance where all the media would enter. This is what would normally be the entrance to the pub at the park, which is the kind of the main restaurant for the stadium. You walk through those glass doors, get on the elevator and go up one floor, and you come out in the restaurant. But when the Blue Jays were here, it was the main players entrance where you'd see players coming in and out of. And you can see even the elevators were changed to be Blue Jays. If you took those elevators down a level, where fans aren't normally permitted, this is where the players would go. They would come out here, and this is where the players would get off to go into the locker rooms and the clubhouses. And again, this picture really shows a lot of changes because even, the Blue Jays logos, but also even the rugs were changed. The ceiling was fixed up, everything. You really can see a big transformation there. The hallways that led down towards the clubhouses, again, you can see the logos painted on the wall, the new carpeting. The meeting room in the home clubhouse, what would have been that for the Bisons, was changed into the manager's office. Charlie Montoya, the Blue Jays manager. And I think probably the main reason for that was the former manager's office was kind of small. And so this provided him with more room in order to social distance and meet with his staff and so forth. And you can see the conga drums there that Charlie Montoya enjoys playing for relaxation. The before picture is the Bison's locker room, and then it was changed into the coach's locker room. And again, before you would have had, 25 to 30 players kind of crammed pretty tightly in there. But by changing it into the coach's locker room, you'd have less people in there, and you can see how they had the dividers in between and were able to spread out more. The visiting locker room became a stretching area and a path to the home dugout. I'll show you where the visiting locker room was changed to here in a second. The batting cages which were kind of right outside of the home clubhouse before, were changed into the Blue Jays locker room. And the photos here are of last year, so that they were kind of temporarily changed into the players' locker room. But this year, and I'll get to this at the end, they're making a lot more permanent changes to the ballpark right now. And they're actually making this area permanently into the home locker room. So it'll be the Blue Jays locker room this year and the Bison's locker room from thereafter. The home weight room, formerly the home weight room, was turned into the home trainer's room. I love this picture because it kind of shows really the wear and tear of the 32-year history of the stadium on the left, and then how they fixed it up on the right. And then you'll also notice that on the left, it says the tunnel to the visiting dugout. On the right, it's the tunnel to the home dugout. The Bisons have always had their dugout on the first base side. But up in Toronto, the Blue Jays have always had their home dugout on the third base side. So when they came here to Buffalo, they switched the home dugout over to the third base side, so it would be like it is up at Rogers Center. And again, you can see that here, what was the visiting dugout on the third baseline became the home dugout. Another thing that you'll notice when you look at pictures from inside the ballpark is that the dominant color of the ballpark really before was green, and that all kind of changed over to blue last year for the Blue Jays, of course. And you can really see that in this picture, the green theme changing over to blue. You see the visiting dugout on the left was changed into the home dugout. And they put up, and there's some more photos coming up of this, but like an auxiliary dugout behind the home dugout, they put up the covering to keep the players covered from the sun. And so that they could spread out more and wouldn't all be crammed into the dugout. They'd be able to spread out into the stands a little bit because there weren't fans allowed here last year, so they were able to do that. One of the things that the Blue Jays really wanted to do when they came here last year was move the bullpens. The bullpen mounds are right on the field, kind of like how a lot of stadiums were back in the 80s. But most stadiums don't have the mound on the field anymore. I think Tampa might actually be one that has it on the field. But most teams don't have it on the field anymore, and they wanted to move that. But they just, in 18 days, they really didn't have the time to do it. There really wasn't a good place to move it, so they kept it on the field. And it was kind of interesting because that did come into play a couple of times. It was either the first or second game that they were here. Teoscar Hernandez, a Blue Jays outfielder, was chasing after a ball and he kind of stumbled over the mound. And then later in the year, Rowdy Tellez, the Blue Jays first baseman, was going out after a foul ball trying to catch it, and he stepped on the home plate out there and injured his knee. So it actually, when they were talking about that they had to move it, I was like, oh, that's not going to make any difference. And actually it did come into play a couple times. But you can see how they added an auxiliary bullpen out there too, so that the players would be sitting up in the stands and be able to spread out a little bit more rather than just kind of crowded onto a bench down there. I think I just let somebody in again. Sorry if you were waiting there. I didn't see that you were in the waiting room. Sorry if you were waiting out there. I didn't see you in the waiting room.
Well, Roger, that'll teach you to get here on time next time.
Now, one of the big things, and this is going to be really different this year when the Blue Jays come here, was the Blue Jays used every inch of the stadium, like literally. I mean, they even like the souvenir shop they were using to store video equipment. And this is on the concourse level, which would normally be, if there were fans there, you know, where fans would enter and exit the stadium, where you go out to get a snack or hot dog or use the bathroom. But because there weren't fans there, the Blue Jays put all that to use. They had weight rooms there. They had batting cages on that level. Now this year, when the Blue Jays come back, they're finding alternatives for these things that I'll talk about later, because they're going to have to keep this area open for fans and be able to have fans social distance as well. This is when I showed the elevator before and I said that you could go up to get to the main restaurant. This is the main restaurant here. This is the pub at the park, which was changed into the Blue Jays team kitchen and dining area. Now this big white, they called it a tent-like structure, was where the visiting team clubhouses were. And the umpires were out here too as well. I think probably in that smaller building on the right. And I'll have some more photos of this coming up. After every game, you'd see the other teams kind of going out and going through the door in the wall and going out to the white tent in right field. This is the New York Mets walking out there right now. So this kind of shows you where that was. It's just beyond right center field. This is the entrance and the hallway to that building. The visiting team locker room and the manager's office in that white tent structure. And again, keep in mind, they did all this in 18 days. And one of the ways that they were able to do this so quickly is that this structure was actually designed for the Field of Dreams game that they were going to play in Iowa. And so they already had like the blueprint and the plan for it all. I've heard that some of the materials for this building also came from the Field of Dreams game. I haven't verified that, but I believe it's true because they were able to do it so quickly. But you can see how they were able to spread out there. Visiting washrooms and their gym out there. They also, one of the big things that they had to do in that 18-day time period was upgrade the field lights. They were, perfect for minor league baseball, but they weren't up to major league specifications. So they changed the lighting, the lights that were already there, and they also brought in 2 portable light towers. There was one right down the line in left field and one down the line in right field in order to create more lighting and bring it up to major league specifications. These photos just kind of show you the change in the stadium and the color scheme going from green to blue. One of the things they also did in that short time period was that they resodded the entire infield and went about 15 to 20 feet out into the outfield too. This year, actually right now, they're resodding the outfield as well. It's kind of a dirt outfield right now because they're putting down new sod in the outfield to get ready for the Blue Jays. This is like out in right field on a parking ramp. I took this picture. Fans would normally, if they wanted to, go out on that parking ramp and look in at the stadium, but last year they didn't allow them to because they were afraid that too many people would gather up there, with COVID, so they didn't allow people to go out there. But you can see the auxiliary bullpen on the left there and the auxiliary dugouts on the right, the cardboard fans behind home plate. And this is taken from the same area, but looking at the third base side with the auxiliary dugout and bullpen. And this on the left is the Blue Jays auxiliary dugout with players actually in it. And you can see how they would go back there during the game. I zoomed in on the right on Derek Fisher, who was an outfielder for Toronto last year, just to show how they had the seat covers there so that players wouldn't sit too close to one another. Although I see that none of them are wearing masks here, but. This is the visitors side, and the visitors auxiliary dugout. On the left, it's the Baltimore Orioles. On the right, I just kind of thought this was a cool photo of Pete Alonso of the Mets. He's not actually sitting in the auxiliary dugout here. He's sitting just outside of it, but he's kind of sitting there among the cardboard fans. So I just thought it would kind of look cool with him sitting there with the cardboard fans. And this is a shot of the Blue Jays auxiliary bullpen out in left field. And you can see they had a lot of players out there, a lot of relief pitchers and coaches and stuff. So they were able to spread out a little bit more than they would have if they were all sitting on the field. And of course, they had the cardboard fans like so many stadiums had last year. On the right is a picture at the beginning. If you remember, I showed you the bleachers that were in right field when the stadium was originally built. And they built like a party deck out there. It's usually called the Bully Hill Party Deck when the Bisons are here. But even that was changed for the Blue Jays. They changed it to the WestJet Flight Deck, which is the name of the party area up at Rogers Center in Toronto. So they're tried to keep it as close to the Rogers Center as they could. And they put cardboard fans out there like they were cheering. And again, you can see the Canadian advertising on the fence. That was all changed. The honored numbers of the Blue Jays were put up on the picture on the left. That would normally be the press box, but for the Blue Jays, that wasn't used as the press box. They put the press down on the first level in the regular seating, spread out more so that they could be spread out and not inside because of the pandemic. The numbers have actually changed since I put this presentation together, because number 12 is Roberto Alomar, 32 is Roy Halladay, and 42 is, of course, Jackie Robinson. But Alomar, as everyone knows, was put on the ineligible list by the commissioner. And the Blue Jays actually said they're going to take down his number at the Rogers Center, the banner that honors his number, and take him off of their honored names that they have there, their Ring of Honor, level of excellence, they call it. So it will obviously be coming down at Salem Field too. So that number 12, I would assume, won't be there this year. And then the number 1 on the outfield wall was to honor Tony Fernandez, the late great Blue Jays shortstop who passed away last year. And one sight that was really common to see probably at every game that you would not normally see were just players walking right through the stands since there were no fans there. The quickest way to get from the dugout to the batting cages, there's different ways they could have gone, but the quickest way is just to cut right through the stands and walk back on the concourse. So you would often see players who were that day's designated hitter just walking up through the stands, and they'd go back and use the batting cages and then walk back down. So that's Pete Alonso there on the left, and of course Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on the right. This is just kind of a cool thing that the Bisons do, a cool tradition that they have. If a player, usually a left-handed hitter, hits a ball over that the party deck in right field, what's normally called the Bully Hill Party Deck, and hit it over that and into the parking lot in right field, the Bisons will put a white ball there, marking where the ball landed, and put the player's name and the date that they hit it. Rowdy Tellez of the Blue Jays actually hit a ball out there when he was a minor league player, the 2019 one. And then he was the first player to hit one out there as a major leaguer too. And so they painted the ball out there like they normally would for a Bison's player. And then they did the Blue Jay one in blue though to delineate it from the other ones and show that it was special. And Tellez was only the 3rd player ever to hit multiple home runs out there. Russell Branyan did it with the Bisons, and so did Brad Snyder. It was a 429-foot shot, the one on the right. These are some Salem Field Major League firsts. Most of these came in the first game there when the Blue Jays played the Marlins on August 11th. The triple actually came a couple weeks later. But Hyunjin Ryu, who's pictured there, he was the starting pitcher that night. So he threw the first pitch to Jonathan Villar. Travis Shaw had the first hit. He was on the Blue Jays last year. He's on the Brewers now, but Brian Anderson had the first home run for the Marlins, and then Bo Bichette had one for the Blue Jays. But Shaw actually won the game that night. It was on ESPN. Bases loaded single in the 10th inning. And he's the other person picture there is Travis Shaw. And it was really cool to see, the visiting teams come in, some who had never been here and some who hadn't been here in decades. The Blue Jays hadn't played here since 1987 when they played an exhibition game against the Cleveland Indians at our old stadium, which was called War Memorial Stadium, which was actually, everybody knows as being the home of the New York Knights in the movie The Natural. That was the last time the Blue Jays played here. The Red Sox were last here in 1917 when they played an exhibition game against the Bisons. The Phillies, I have an asterisk by this one. Their last official game in Buffalo was in 1885 when the Bisons were members of the National League. But I have a feeling they may have played an exhibition game here after that, because the Bisons were their affiliate in the late 1950s, early 1960s. So I wouldn't be surprised if they played an exhibition game here then. The Yankees last played here in an exhibition game against the International League All-Stars. The Mets played here a couple times in the 60s when the Bisons were their affiliate. And then the Orioles, Rays, and Marlins, it was the first time that any of them had played here as major league teams. And again, seeing, the stars from the other teams come in and play here in Buffalo was really amazing. Jacob deGrom has the NYPD hat on because it was September 11th, the day that he pitched here. Garrett Cole, who's not pictured here, also pitched at Salem Field. So we had two of the, premier pitchers in the game start here, along with Hyunjin Ryu as well for the Blue Jays. And of course, it's Aaron Judge on the left and Giancarlo Stanton on the right. This picture kind of gives you a nice shot of the field. Bryce Harper is batting for the Phillies there. So it was just really cool to see these big stars come in for the other teams. This picture, actually, you can see the highway out in right center field there. You can see a couple cars on it. People could actually drive by on the highway and look in and get a glimpse. Kevin Biggio played here as a minor league player and then came back last year with the Blue Jays. So he really understood the transformation that took place and how they used all the room and to maximize space for last season. And these pictures I just kind of called signs for the times. They were very kind of 20 pictures that symbolize 2020. On the left with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Jonathan Villar, who actually started the season with the Marlins and was the first batter at Salem Field, but then he got moved to the Blue Jays at the trade deadline. They both have the face coverings on, as you would see most players would do. Black Lives Matter, you would see they had the sign out in right center field. You'd see players with the shirt on during batting practice. That's Dominic Smith of the Mets. And occasionally for the national anthems, you would see a player take a knee. That's Giancarlo Stanton of the New York Yankees, kneeling next to Brett Gardner, who's standing. So I thought those really, give a real snapshot of last year. Home field advantage. The Blue Jays really had no idea how this field would play for them coming here. And they really did well here. They finished with a 17-9 record at Salem Field, which was the best winning percentage of any team at home last year. So they really did well here. They had 4 walk-off wins. The big picture there on the left is Randall Grichuk coming home after he homered to beat the Baltimore Orioles for a walk-off win. And the photo on the bottom right, Teoscar Hernandez jumping up for a high five there. He had just had a walk-off hit to win a game there. But of all the wins that they had here, The biggest by far came on September 24th when they beat the New York Yankees to clinch a playoff berth, which was, for me growing up a Blue Jay fan in Buffalo, surreal to see that night. First of all, the Blue Jays playing here, and they're playing the New York Yankees and beat them to clinch a playoff berth and celebrate on the field. It was really something to see. This picture is just kind of a funny one. When you looked around the park, there really wasn't, and there weren't any Bison logos left. Everything had been changed over to the Blue Jays. I think maybe on the scoreboard, it said home of the Bisons, but other than that, there really wasn't anything Blue Jays or Bisons related, except for some of the Bisons offices look out on the field, and through one of those windows, they had these characters. You're probably familiar with, like in Milwaukee, they have the sausage races, and in Pittsburgh, they have pierogi races, or the president races in Washington. What else would we race here in Buffalo but chicken wings and the fixings that go with them? So every Bison's game, they have chicken wing and his friends carrot and celery, and they have a race. And they were all looking out of one of the office windows onto the field with a Bison sign. So that was kind of funny. I talked about a lot of firsts that happened at Salem Field, Major League wise. This was the final pitch of the 2020 season. Ironically, it was thrown by a former Buffalo Bison, Cesar Valdez. Joe Panic is at the plate, and Chance Sisco is the catcher. But that was the final pitch of the 2020 season at Salem Field. But of course, that's not the end to the Blue Jays story here. It was announced earlier in the year that they were going to be making a lot of upgrades to Salem Field in preparation for the possible return of the Blue Jays this year. This photo I took maybe about 2 weeks ago. You can see that they're finally moving those bullpens that in the lower part of the picture there, they're building like a tiered home and road bullpen there so that they can have the bullpens off the field. The changes that they're making this year are a lot more permanent. Most of the ones last year were temporary because they had to do it so quickly. But this year, the changes are permanent. They're expanding the clubhouses. The home clubhouse, I guess, now is going to be huge. They're moving just to the left of these bullpens. They're building batting cages that are kind of like out in that parking lot that in right field, so that the batting cages won't be on the concourses anymore, because this year there's going to be people at the games. So they needed to make it so that fans could be there. And they're really putting in a lot of work, permanent changes at the field this year. Of course, the Bisons weren't able to play there when their stadium's going through this big transformation. So they're playing in Trenton, New Jersey right now, the home of the Trenton Thunder. And Trenton is not close to here. It's about a 6.5-hour drive. So they moved pretty far away. Trenton lost their AA team last year with a minor league restructuring. So last night, we were talking before the presentation started, the Bison season started. They're wearing Trenton Thunder jerseys when they play in Trenton. And when they go on the road, they're going to wear Buffalo Bison's jerseys. And the Blue Jays just announced today, to make it official, that they will be coming to Buffalo on June 1st. The first series is once again going to be against the Marlins, just like it was last year, which is kind of ironic because the Florida they're Miami Marlins now, but Florida Marlins were one of the teams that got the expansion team that this stadium was built to try to get. And so they'll be coming here again. And then I know we have an Astros fan here tonight. The Astros are going to be the second team in this year. They play the second series here. So that'll be cool to see them. And so it's to be continued. There's more coming this year, and fans are going to be allowed in this year. When the Blue Jays announced it today, they said that they were going to let 24% capacity come to games. and the thinking behind the 24%, I guess, was New York said that you could have 33% capacity, but you have to have 6-foot distance between pods of people. So in order to have that 6-foot distance, they could only get it up to 24%. But literally moments after the Blue Jays announced that, Governor Cuomo gave a press conference and kind of changed all the rules for capacity at stadiums. He said to the effect that if you're vaccinated, there's no limits, you'll be able to sit closer together. So I guess the Mets and Yankees are planning on having sections of vaccinated people. And I would imagine the Blue Jays will change course and do something similar to that, but they're kind of examining that now. But there definitely will be fans at the stadium this year, so that will be a big change from last year. And with that, I'll open it up to questions if anybody has any questions about anything.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. That was awesome. Much appreciated. All right, who's got some questions for our?
Well, just you mentioned at the end, sort of the they're doing more upgrades, but once the Jays leave, how much of this is going to stay?
The stuff that they're doing right now, it's gonna stay. They actually were required to do some of it because of the new agreement between Major League or I guess it's not really agreement, it's more Major League Baseball taking over the minor league. They required like a lot of the things that they're putting in like new nutritional rooms and weight rooms and training rooms and those kinds of things that were actually required by Major League Baseball. And the clubhouse is getting bigger. The batting cages out in right field, that stuff is going to stay this year. So the changes that they're making right now are permanent. Most of what they did last year was temporary stuff.
It makes it the lighting at minor league parks is just so cruddy because I know Dunedin also had to upgrade their lights.
Yeah, and I'm sure the players are going to really notice that, like visiting AAA players when they come in here now with the upgraded lighting, they're going to really notice the difference from their parks.
Hey, Brian.
Yep.
Who's paying for all of these upgrades and construction and all?
Yep, that's a great question. Last year, the Blue Jays paid for everything. All of the temporary stuff the Blue Jays paid for. This year, because a lot of it, again, is required that the Bisons would have had to do. I think they had a 2-year period where they could do a lot of these upgrades. The Blue Jays and Bisons are splitting the cost. I don't know what percentage. The stadium, though, is actually owned by the city of Buffalo. So I'm honestly not sure if the city is also helping to pay a little bit of it, but I know that the Blue Jays and the Bisons are paying for it, for the ones this year.
Thanks.
Brian, are the Bisons still playing only in what, Trenton? They're not going to play here at all during
They're gonna play in Trenton until the Blue Jays plans are still that they said when they started the year they wanted to take a 3-tiered approach, start in Dunedin and then come to Buffalo and then hopefully go to Toronto. It's in the news a lot here. Probably we're so close to Canada, but probably not as much down there. But Canada really, especially Ontario, where the Blue Jays are based, had a real surge in cases recently. Their vaccine rollout hasn't gone as smooth as it has in the States. So it doesn't look like the border is going to be opening anytime soon. But, who knows what could happen in the summer as they more vaccinations happen up there. But if the Blue Jays are able to return to Toronto, the Bisons will come back here. But if the Blue Jays are here the whole summer, then the Bisons will be in Trenton the whole summer. So.
Oh, can you hear me? No.
Yeah, go ahead, Fred. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if I was muted. Just a question about what's going on with the NHL and the Canadian government. Doesn't look like they're going to let the playoff teams come to Canada unless they quarantine for 2 weeks. Are you getting any indicator that this is a trend or this would affect the Blue Jays situation?
Well, the NHL was a little bit different from the start because they formed that Canadian division up there.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to keep crossing the borders. That's how they got away with having games up there where they wouldn't let the Blue Jays, because they made it so that they wouldn't cross the border as much. And I know they were talking about having like playoff pods for some of the NHL teams in different areas. I don't follow the NHL that closely, so I'm not sure what the resolution on that was, but the Blue Jays last year, when they applied for to play in Canada, Ontario approved it, which is their province, but it was the federal government that actually turned them down at the end. So I don't really think the NHL situation has that much to do with it, other than when they get the situation, the coronavirus rates down up there, it could be possible. It's been on the news a lot here recently because Buffalo's literally right across the river from Canada. And we haven't been, my wife's parents live just across the border in Canada, and we haven't seen them since March 2020 because neither one of us can cross the border. But there's some talk right now about letting vaccinated people cross the border, but that's not really going to help Major League Baseball because the teams don't have 100% vaccination rates on their teams. So even if they start letting that loophole, kind of, that if you're vaccinated you can cross the border, I don't really think that's going to help the Blue Jays situation at all. So I think it could be a while that they're in Buffalo, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Brian, what kind of sense do you get being tapped into the Buffalo baseball scene? What kind of sense do you get of what kind of demand there's going to be for tickets once, and now of course they're going to be starting on sale soon.
Yeah.
What kind of sense do you get for demand for now that fans can actually go to these games, whereas they couldn't in 2020?
I think it's going to be huge, especially with with limited capacity. Like if they're only selling, it seats over 16,000 now, but if they're only selling like 3,000 or 4,000 tickets, it's going to be a big demand for it. Their second homestand, I think it's the first team they play, is the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just going to be through the roof. I mean, even though Toronto is only an hour and a half away, I would say that the majority of people around here are Yankees fans because we're in New York State.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a huge following here. And for the Yankees series, it's going to be huge. But I think, they'll sell out, I would think, for every game, especially with the limited capacity. It's going to be a really hot ticket.
Hey, Brian, is there still a minor league team in Batavia?
There was up until 2019. They were Batavia Muck Dogs. They used to be the Batavia Clippers. They were in the New York Penn League, and the New York Penn League doesn't exist anymore. And so they don't exist as a minor league team anymore. I think they're going to have a college like Wood Bat League team there though. But I don't believe it's like affiliated with minor league baseball in any way anymore. It was really sad to see the New York Penn League go away, but.
Brian, I have a question for you, or open-ended for anybody else that might know the answer to it. It intrigued me when you were showing the earlier photos in your presentation about the 1800s, the players and the teams in Buffalo and other places. Do you happen to know what the typical age range for baseball players was back in the late 1800s, early 1900s compared to today? Is it roughly the same age of young men who were playing?
I'm trying to think. I think it probably would have been. I can't think. Did Roger have an answer for that? Okay.
No.
I think it probably would have been. I don't think they would have been any older or younger, but I don't have any hard and fast stats for that to back me up.
I think it probably should be. I mean, there were actually more leagues though at the time too, so there's
Yeah.
more opportunities.
Mhm.
I was just wondering if they played to later ages, for instance, than we do now.
I
You
know
had more older players or not.
Deacon White, who was in one of the National League Bison pictures that I showed, I believe he was like in his 40s when he played for the Bisons, but he was kind of the older guy of the team, so I don't think like they would have been really older for the time. Galvin kind of blew his arm out towards the end of his career from pitching just about every day. So
Well, and I think you heard a lot of stories. The guys would play 10 years in the majors and then play another 10 in the minors.
yeah,
I mean,
that's true. I think like the higher minor league teams weren't viewed so much as minor league then. They were just kind of a separate league, you know?
I think the pay wasn't that much.
Yeah, exactly.
They had, at one time, they had 3 different major leagues going at the same time. They had a Players League, Association, National League. Also, equipment and medical science played a big factor. You hear about catchers, just their careers were just extremely short back then.
Well, I got another.
Catching barehanded, they didn't have, it was Brezhnev that had the first
Right.
tools of ignorance.
Yeah.
So I think they probably didn't last as long. Some of them did, probably pitchers. Although Cap Anson, who was a vicious racist, you all know the story about him. He played pretty long. He's the guy that demanded the color line. But I think probably the careers were shortened by the circumstances of the time. That's anecdotal. I don't have the statistics on that right now. Be interesting. And I think it's be an interesting study.
Yeah.
Brian, I got another off topic, and it's sort of as a reformed attorney, what made you start the Chronicle?
I always say to my wife, because I spend so much time working on the Herd Chronicles now and the articles and watching games and tweeting and everything. And if I was an attorney still, I don't think I would have the time to do this. Because I'm a teacher, I have my summers off, and it's kind of tough right now because we get out of school in June. But the summers really make me able to do this. The way that the Herd Chronicles actually started is I was writing researching, I really shouldn't say writing, researching to write a book on the National League Bisons from the 1880s. And I just kept going to the library and mostly going through newspaper articles and researching. This went on for a few years, and my wife was like, why don't you put some of this on the internet? Why don't you do something? And I was like, oh, I don't think people would be interested, And so eventually the idea just came about to just write about on the internet about all of Buffalo baseball history, or mostly Bison's history. And so I started writing not just about that National League team, but about other things that happened. And the first article I came out with was Babe Ruth making his professional debut against the Bisons with the Baltimore. And that article kind of took off, and the Bisons were great. Like I had the website for about a month or two, and they called me and asked me to come because they want the team executives, the team president, Mike Bushkowski, and assistant general manager now, Brad Bisping, called and wanted to meet me and talk with me. And then they started putting my articles on their website, and everything really just kind of took off and built up on it. So
Free publicity, of course they're gonna. Hey.
Exactly. And so it's been great though, like the relationship with the team and everything. It's been wonderful.
It's nice to hear.
One follow-up question that kind of dovetails with what Jim just asked for you, Brian. During the presentation, you made very, very clear which photos were courtesy of the Blue Jays, that documenting the before and the after of Salem Field and so forth. Obviously, there are others, though, that were courtesy of the Herd Chronicles that you took. What kind of access did you have during last season to be able to see games in the ballpark? And under what kind of auspices were you able to get in there and do that when they weren't allowing fans in?
Yep. I applied when they first came here. I applied for media credentials through Major League Baseball, which I'd never done before. And I said that I had the Herd Chronicles website and that I'm a Buffalo baseball historian and wanted to document the team in the city and plan on writing a book about it. And I got approved for the media credentials, but then you had to apply daily for the games. Like you would go on and apply for the game and you wouldn't find out if you were getting into the game until about 24 hours before the game. And so the first couple games, there was a lot of national media here, like ESPN was here, and there was just a lot of national writers and stuff came. And I didn't get into those, so I was like, oh, I'm not getting in. And then I started getting approved, and kind of as the season went on, I was getting approved. And so I was able to go in, and you would enter through that Swan Street gate that I showed you at the beginning, and it was kind of gated off so that you would just kind of walk in and go right to the stands in the area that you were going to sit. And there were little tables there set up in the stands that you would sit at your number, and you really couldn't move around that much. You kind of just stayed right there. So all my photos were kind of, when I'm at a Bison's game, I move around and get different angles and stuff. But for this, I had to just sit at the spot and kind of anchored in one spot and take them. So it was hard to get pictures of, say, guys batting and stuff because you were just kind of stuck right behind home plate, getting the same angle all the time. But it ended up, I ended up taking a lot of pictures and getting some good pictures, and so it all worked out. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. They had a limit; they could only let in, I think it was 20 media members every game. And really, luckily for me, the Canadian media, for the most part, didn't cross the border. So it was really just maybe one or two writers from the other team and some Buffalo media. And there was a writer for the Toronto Sun that was there every game. Other than that, there really wasn't a lot of Canadian media. They did all their press conferences via Zoom.
Right.
So all the Toronto newspapers and TV stations and stuff could do the press conferences on Zoom. And so they didn't have to travel here. So that kind of worked out for me as well.
Where is the stadium? I mean, how convenient is it now that they're letting fans get into, I guess, downtown or?
Yep, it's
Buffalo?
right. It's right downtown Buffalo, but it's right off the 190, which is the main highway that goes through the city. And there's a good amount of parking right around the stadium and everything, so it's convenient to get down there.
Did you play baseball?
So when
Did you play baseball as a kid?
I played through high school. That was it.
So when are they going to recruit the Tampa Bay Rays once the Blue Jays leave? And
if you'd asked me in the 1980s if Buffalo could support a team full time, I definitely would have said yes. I think the economics of the game have probably forced us out of that because we're a smaller city than like Detroit or Pittsburgh or Cleveland, and those teams struggle from time to time with the economics of the game. So I think Buffalo at this point is probably too small to support a team full time. Definitely this year with the Blue Jays, it's going to be like the hottest ticket in town. So that'll be, selling out and stuff. But
if you get 5,000 for these games, I think that matches what the Rays or the
yeah, I know we probably could. Back when we had those 6 years where we were drawing over 1 million fans, I was talking with Greg Brown, who is now the radio and television voice of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was in Buffalo then doing games, and we were a Pittsburgh Pirate affiliate, and he was saying, yeah, like back then we'd look at our attendance here in Buffalo and we'd have bigger crowds than Pittsburgh was having, on a pretty regular basis. So yeah, we draw well. We don't draw, the Bisons don't draw that well anymore. And that was kind of, the stadium was new. It was the kind of a hot ticket for a while. I think the entertainment in the city has been diversified a lot now. There's the waterfront of the city has kind of taken off. There's a lot of concerts downtown and stuff. So The Bisons don't draw as well now as they did back then, but they still draw well for a minor league team. You know, we still do well.
I have a question on the media stuff, and I apologize, maybe you mentioned it to begin with.
Yep.
But how many playoff games were played in Buffalo?
None. They made it to the playoffs as a wild card team, and
Oh,
they
yeah,
went down to Tampa and they lost in 2 games.
that's right.
That's
Okay,
best of-
okay. Yeah,
Wait,
okay.
was it best of 3 the first round last year? I think it was.
Yeah, it was hard to follow because it was
Yeah.
all over the board.
And they were all like on the
did
same
remember
day,
that, but
everybody
thank
played.
you.
Yeah, they went out really quickly. They went out in 2 games.
Yeah.
But we're hopeful for playoff games this year.
Yeah, I think that would be fascinating to see that happen in what is not their traditional market, because if the Blue Jays made the playoffs and they were playing in Toronto, the Rogers Center would be full.
Yeah.
It would be nuts. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see by the time the playoffs roll around, the Blue Jays make it, what is Salem Field's percentage of allowed attendance, and what's that going to be like in a market that is just not used to Major League Baseball.
And if they do get to that point, they're hopeful that they'll be in Toronto by that time. But anything's possible here.
By the way, just for your information, you may know this, but with Tampa Bay winning everything this year, a lot of stuff this year, it's now called Champa Bay.
Yeah.
The Super Bowl, the Stanley Cup, American League,
Yep.
they've had a pretty good run.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, and they're still technically hosting our 3rd Major League team in Florida, right there in Dunedin.
Yep.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Brian?
Well, let me just say kudos. It was a wonderful
Yes.
Good
presentation.
job.
Yeah, that
you.
was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for having
Thank you,
me.
Brian.
Oh, absolutely, Brian. Thank you. Hopefully, if you're so inclined, we meet as a chapter on Zoom first Wednesday of every month, 7 p.m. We've been doing, obviously, Zoom since April of last year.
Okay.
But yeah, our chapter meets regularly, and we usually have a pretty good turnout. However, I think folks are starting to get a little Zoom exhaustion from.
Yeah.
I think DeSantis declared the COVID over, so I'm.
Oh yeah, and they're all, yeah, that's true. The rest of them are out drinking. Yeah, so.
I'm ready to meet for a beer.
Well, okay, Fred, there you go. Thank you for your segment. Brian, would you mind making me host again?
Brian, thank you very much. Very enjoyable.
Yes, again, this was excellent.
How do I make you host?
If you go down to the participants in the bottom there, should be the toolbar at the bottom, and my name near the top of the list, and you can go ahead and set me as a host.
Or you could just hijack the meeting and run it from there.
Yeah, or yep, I can reclaim host too. So let me go ahead and just reclaim. Okay,
Oh, good.
there we go. Okay, got it. All right. So very cool. Well, Fred, as I said, you made a nice segue for me without me having to say anything further. Yes, I did want to throw that out there to those of us who are here at the meeting tonight and are locally based here in Tallahassee or in the area, the Metroplex. Are we feeling comfortable with the idea of getting together in person for our next social, or for a social that is off cycle and not necessarily the first Wednesday of June?
I'm fully vaxxed.
Yeah,
Me too.
I've got my 2 shots.
Got my two.
Everybody's vaxxed, you know.
Yeah, I kind of got the sense that as we saw vaccinations starting to roll out, that you all who were eligible at the time were getting right there and getting that done as quickly as you could. And I got my 2 shots last month. If the comfort level is there amongst us and amongst the other locals who weren't able to attend tonight, I'm certainly up for it. But as you might recall from where we were last year in March, before COVID chased us indoors, we're scrambling badly for a new location for our monthly socials. We were having a difficult time finding a meeting situation that accommodated all of us in a meeting space that allowed for conversation, that had hopefully a restaurant with a good menu, some variety, drinks, and so forth. And we were casting about for a place, and we were starting to do that research when COVID hit. If we are interested in going back to trying to meet in person, as I said, either on the first Wednesday in June or off cycle, if you have any ideas, any places that you might want to recommend, please shoot me an email, or we can discuss a few now if you want, whatever. Not going to make any decisions tonight because I want to put this out to the rest of the membership who couldn't attend as well. But I do want us to start thinking seriously about where we might want to try and gather. And of course, the trick is going to be how many of us can make it? Do we want to impose, or do we have to respect social distancing requirements by the restaurant in question? All these things still need to be worked out. So we're going to have to investigate all that. But if you have any thoughts or ideas about where we might want to meet, let me know. We can either talk about them tonight, or you can just shoot me an email. I'm open to either.
Well, fourth quarter wasn't clean before COVID, so.
Fourth quarter might have given us the immunity to COVID for all we know.
Yeah,
A lot of antibodies floating around in our bloodstream.
Yeah.
must
yeah.
be. Yeah,
Yeah,
must be.
Yeah, Brian, for your and Dixie for your edification. Fourth quarter is a local sports bar here in Tallahassee that has been around since at least the early '90s.
Hasn't been clean since.
Yeah, no. I think they built it. They cleaned it once, and that was it.
We're a class group.
Yeah. We met in the back of that restaurant, which isn't very big to begin with, in what they call the Fred Biletnikoff room, named after the All-Pro Hall of Famer wide receiver for the Raiders who played at Florida State back in the early 60s. And it was a good space for us because we could close the door on it, and we had our isolation from the rest of the restaurant. We could have good conversation. Food typically wasn't too bad. Service, however, got spotty. They started to forget about us the longer we were there. Often we met, they closed the door, and they seemed to forget there was a room back there with people in it. And of course, the hygiene consideration with the place that, they seem to keep their license. The door was never locked. So I don't know. But eventually we had to move on from that location, and we were starting to cast about for a new one when COVID hit last year. So we're kind of in that.
It kind of ended for me when Fred and Kent started showing up with their little urinals in their hand.
they bring their own bottles with them.
Yeah.
I don't mean fifth of vodka or
The
bourbon.
stadium
bathroom was a
buddy.
little-
If you ever read David Sedaris's piece about the stadium buddy, little bag that you strap to your leg.
Yep.
Yep.
I have a thought about the El Jalisco up here on Cary Forest. They've got a
Okay.
back room that's pretty nice.
Okay.
And that's a kind of isolated. Depends, I guess, on the night you're going. Usually you're going on a weeknight, it'll be a Wednesday. They probably would have the room to accommodate us, and we'd be kind of isolated back there.
Yeah.
Now, if a party of 12 comes in with a bunch of little kids, not good.
Yeah. But
They don't have a separate room, though. I take it.
No, they don't.
Yeah. Okay. So that's just part of the restaurant. You'd be in the back part of
Right.
an restaurant.
Right.
Yeah, because ideally we would like to have the separate room if we could, which in February at Momo's we thought we had. Then turns out we got paired in there with the birthday party,
Yeah.
5-year-old and all who attended, unbeknownst to us because we thought we had the room to ourselves. That was interesting. And then that following month we went to the Island Wings, I think it was, right across the way from them, and they had a small room, but that facility, that restaurant, has such high ceilings with hard surfaces everywhere that even in that private room, which wasn't completely isolated from the rest of the restaurant,
Too noisy.
boy, you couldn't hear each other. If you were sitting next to somebody, you couldn't hear him or her, and it didn't work out. So yeah, be thinking about any place you can think of that has private dining options that are open and available to us, even in the pandemic circumstances such as they are right now, which is, again, going to be something that I'm sure will evolve over time in terms of relaxation of requirements or restrictions. And we'll just have to see what we want to do. But I'm definitely for trying to meet in person. I think our group is ready. I think everyone is ready to do it. And I think we'd get some folks back who haven't been able to join us or have chosen not to join us via Zoom. So it would be good to kind of rebuild those connections as well. So I'll put that out there in a follow-up email before too long. and we can get that conversation going as well.
Okay. Sounds good.
Oh, go ahead, Fred.
I said, sounds good.
Oh, it sounds good. Okay, cool. Anything else for the good of the order before we say good evening? Dixie.
I have two small things. Most of my work, especially lately, has been done in 19th century and dead ball era. So I can sort of answer that question about the players and their ages.
Oh, good.
I haven't ever noticed any difference really in that age and our age. About maybe they're probably younger now when they start. But if you took everybody who played every year and put them on a chart, you would probably see that maybe 10%, 15% were early 20s and probably played 2 or 3 years, not very many games, and they were gone. Another 20, 25% played 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer. And then another group would play into their 30s. And then you got guys like Cap Anson, who played 27 years,
Right.
1871 to 1897, and Cy Young, 1890 to 1911. And there's probably 5% of those kinds of people who played back then, just like there are now.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I want to show this because it came right on time.
Yeah.
This is from the Worcester Telegram and Gazette this past Sunday. It is the Woo Sox, a special edition Welcome to Baseball issue for all the people who live in Worcester and around. And of course, this is not a big deal in Florida, but it is a huge deal in central Massachusetts. Now, my hometown is 20 miles south of Worcester on the Connecticut border. And I have a lot of high school friends still in Webster, and I emailed one of my best friends, who is in the top 1% of football fans. But I knew he would get the Telegram and Gazette on Sunday. So I said, John, if you have this and you don't want it, I want it. He mailed it to me, came in today.
Cool.
So now I have the official Woo Sox little booklet to start the season with.
Nice. Yep. Yeah. Relocating that franchise from Pawtucket, which was, of course, AAA affiliate for the Red Sox for, I don't know, decades. It seemed like it was always Pawtucket when I was
Probably
growing up.
40 years. I'm surprised that Pawtucket people didn't attack Worcester people. Just have a two-city war going on.
Yeah, and that's one of those ones where that relocation, is surprisingly generated very little dust, very little hullabaloo about it. It just kind of happened, and then that was it. But maybe in the Northeast.
Well, it deep rooted. It did. It
Yeah.
did, because the Pawtucket people never thought ever that they were going to move, and that's was one of their problems. They just never took it as seriously as maybe they should have.
Right. Yeah, I can.
And then suddenly they were gone,
Yep.
and they couldn't do anything about it.
Yep.
And so that's what really hurt them.
Yeah, that's
Because I belong to the Southern Rhode Island SABR chapter, along with the City of Boston SABR chapter. And we held meetings at McCoy Stadium every summer.
Mhm.
That's where we held them. In the wintertime, we were at a church, but in the summertime, we were at McCoy Stadium. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a shame, but it is cool for Central Mass to get a team in Worcester.
oh yes.
It's just right there, the Red Sox.
And the stadium, it's probably not completely finished yet, but it looks unbelievable. Because Janet Marie Smith is part of the design group, so that
Yep.
it's going to be fine.
Yep.
Won't be anything wrong with it.
Nope. And hopefully when SABR 50 finally happens in 2022, she'll still be on the docket as one of the panelists or presenters in Baltimore at SABR 50. And she's a phenomenal speaker
yes.
and great ballpark historian and trained architect, if I remember correctly.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So cool.
I have a couple of things, two
Yeah,
things
fine.
to go to the order.
Yeah.
First of all, this is very important, minor league news.
Mm.
The Rocket City Trash Pandas finally have started their first game. They're in the Huntsville, Alabama area. It's my favorite minor league team now because they got the greatest logo in the history of sports, as far as I'm concerned.
The mighty muscles
Raccoon
of
coming
Fort
out of a
Myers.
garbage can. It's just great.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you may not have heard, but another no-hitter this afternoon.
Yep.
Leads from Baltimore threw a no-hitter, only the 10th in franchise history, which I was surprised. Last one was Jim Palmer back in the early 70s.
Really?
69.
Yeah. All
And
those
that's,
great
I mean, that
pictures.
franchise 120 years old. But
Yeah.
again, who was it just had? Oh, San Diego just had their first
Mm-hmm.
no-hitter.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, just a little news.
Well, I think for the logo fight though, I think the Fort Myers Mighty Muscles are going to have to be debated.
I'll have to look that up.
A very questionable logo when you look at it. Oh yeah,
Oh,
Mighty
okay.
Muscles.
it's
All
been
right.
described as the purple vagina.
As soon as I get out of here, I'm going to that.
Everybody get on the Google. Go take
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Brian, did I hear you say you were a Yankee fan? You're muted.
No, I'm a Blue Jay fan. I've always been a Blue Jays fan.
Okay.
But in this area in Western New York, I would say that the majority of people are Yankee fans, but I'm the exception to the rule.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't getting close to a 50-50 split here tonight.
Oh, no.
But I wanted to announce to my Yankee brethren that, and Glenn and Kent have seen this if they looked at their email. So I'm a Yankee fan temporarily because they're playing the Astros. And on ESPN this evening, on one of their shows, they showed a bunch of the signs that the folks were holding up at the game last night. And I thought I saw one of I love College Game Day for football for all the signs. I love what fans come up with. I think I saw the most inventive, imaginative sign ever. Lots of people had professionally done ones and they're holding them up with sticks and all sorts of apparatus. And there were people with trash cans banging them. And then they scanned this one guy that was there with a beat up old sign, just a piece of poster board. I think he did it deliberately. And he just used a Sharpie and it was kind of scrawled out and it said, "I had a better sign, but the Astros stole it."
Good.
Nice. Yeah, and you notice that, of course, Jeff took off early, so we can't
Yeah, really.
rub a little salt in there. Yeah. Sneaks in and then sneaks out. Okay. So, all right. Well, anything else for the good of the order? All right. Hearing nothing else, gentlemen, I think we are adjourned. Look for that email soon with the minutes that Mr. Putnam has been diligently documenting, as well as a link to the recording of the presentation tonight. Again, Brian, thank you very much. That was excellent. Really.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Thank
Boy, we
you.
got
Really
lucky with the
appreciate it,
timing,
Brian.
given the announcement today by the Blue Jays. So that just worked out quickly.
Timely.
And of course, in that same email that I'll be sending out soon, we'll talk more actively about when and where we're going to meet in person in June. So be looking for that.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Yes,
Sí,
really.
gracias.
Likewise.
Thank you. All right. And with that, folks, I bid you all fond good night.
Good night.
Take care.
Thanks. Good
Night,
night.
everybody.
Take care, Matt.
Good night.